Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be covering the Illinois Residential Stretch Code. I'm Ryan Siegel, joined today by my colleague Robert Schlorf. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started here. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please do use the question and answer function. Rather than necessarily putting them in the chat. We might not see them if they go in the chat, but we will see them if they do go into the Q&A function. In case we don't get to your question today, we will look to follow up to provide an answer for that. Today's presentation is based off of the present draft of the Illinois Residential Stretch Code. This is not the final version, and so the material being presented here today is still subject to change between now and when the stretch code becomes available in the springtime and effective or come July 1. So, as noted, Robert Schlorf and myself will be presenting today. And we're here at CDAC, the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center here at the University of Illinois. And our primary mission is to reduce the energy footprint of Illinois and beyond. And these trainings and our technical support for the Illinois Energy Code is one of the ways that we do that. So obviously, being a research institution, we do deal in substantial amounts of education along with some research and advocacy. So understanding that building better buildings oftentimes leads to better longevity, more comfort, along with the utility savings therein. So, the Energy Code training is provided in part by support from the Office of Energy at the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. So we do like to thank them for their support of our program. Today's presentation is being recorded, and after today's presentation, attendees will receive an email with your certificate of completion. For those of you during registration who provided your ICC or AIA information, we will submit those for credits directly to those organizations for you, but everyone will get a certificate of completion regardless of if you provided ICC or AIA information for those organizations who do self-reporting credits. So, we do have a couple of ways for you to reach out to us if you do need technical support for the Illinois Energy Code or the Stretch Code. Energy Code at, it says cdac.org, that should be Energy Code at illinois.edu. We also do have an 800 number if you do need to just have a quick question. Where do I find something? Which code version might apply? We do have an 800 number for that you can call. Again, we do recommend or do prefer using the email address energycode@illinois.edu. That allows us the ability to provide a written response for you so that everyone's able to easily read off the same sheet of music. So with that, we do have several online resources on our webpage, smartenergy.illinois.edu/energy-code. That includes information on upcoming workshops and webinars, along with archive copies. As mentioned, today's webinar is being recorded and will be archived on our webpage for future reference for you. Along with that, we do have several online on-demand training modules available on our website. These are written more for introductory levels, so you don't need to have specialty or a special knowledge of the Energy Code in order to get some good information out of those training modules. This is a look at our schedule between now and July 1st. So today covering residential stretch code, have a few of our archived presentations. Our next webinar in December is looking at questions and answers and how we answer energy code questions. What's the process we use for that, so that you might be able to, if questions do come up, you understand how we arrive at those answers. Along with commercial stretch code will be coming in the new year in February. By that time, things should be much more solidified for that, and understanding that commercial is probably going to be where a lot of questions and intricacy gets involved for that. So we also do have an in-person workshop scheduled for March. The location is probably going to be somewhere in northern Illinois. The location is to be determined for that. So that would be about a 3-hour long workshop. So for those of you who like to see us in person in 3 dimensions rather than just 2, that'll be coming in mid-March for that. Question that is on likely everyone's mind is, when is Illinois moving to 2021 IECC for the base code? The Capital Development Board is meeting today. Hopefully they will finalize that. The present recommendation from the CDB staff is that the effective date be January 1st of 2024 for the 2021 IECC. So that would be, that effective date being January 1st would mean any projects that with a permit application date, January 1st, 2024, going forward, would need to comply with the 2021 IECC. Those permit applications for remaining in 2023 would still follow the 2018 IECC, along with these state amendments. So for those people who may have projects that aren't sure if they're going to make it or not, or which they want to design for, if they want to design to the 2018, they need to make sure to get their permit applications in soon. We do have several other resources on our website. We do link to the current energy codes, including the Illinois amendments, along with the City of Chicago's Energy Transformation Code. So rather than trying to necessarily have to remember long web addresses, you can come to our energy code webpage and we can link you over to that. So, again, we're going to be looking at the amendments that are providing the Illinois stretch code. Mostly this is based on the 2021 IECC, but there are a couple of items being pulled from the public draft of the 2024 IECC for the Illinois stretch code. Going to touch a little bit on the adoption of the stretch code for local municipalities that may be interested in adopting the stretch code, and then looking at some of the different compliance paths for that. So to get started, a little bit about what is Illinois stretch code. Obviously, stretch code is going a little bit more stringent than a base energy code. Obviously, you do get some energy savings from that. And generally speaking, the stretch code predominantly looks at performance over prescriptive. Illinois stretch code does have a prescriptive compliance method for those that may wish to use that rather than having to go through energy modeling to do a performance compliance method. This is partly brought forth by the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, or CEJA, and it has provided forward benchmarks as far as performance. So this is also, for those of you who might be familiar with our neighbors to the north, the stretch code is kind of be like a step code. So this moves forward in relatively predictable steps. So if you have clients that may wish to go above and beyond, which they're perfectly able to do so, that the stretch code kind of allows design professionals to help them reach forward and say, yeah, we're going to design to the performance that would be required in 2029 or 2032 compliant buildings. So as we see, it gets progressively more stringent and higher performing over time, but does so in a predictable fashion for you. So as far as that, as noted earlier, the residential stretch code is going to be based predominantly on the 2021 IECC language. And so that's something that you might see as you're going through. Any references are starting from the 2021 IECC, and then there will be an amendment document noting the improvements to the 2021 that will constitute an Illinois stretch code for that. So also mention that there are a couple of provisions that are being pulled from the 2024 public drafts. The first draft came out in November of last year, and the second draft was released in July of this year. That's part of what is presently being discussed as part of the Illinois Energy Code Advisory Council is which language, understanding there is some differences in language between the first and second draft, and determining which language that we want to use for the Illinois stretch code. So as far as adoption going, local permitting jurisdictions in the state can pass resolutions to adopt a stretch code. In the absence of any resolution, the enforceable code will be the base energy code. So the Illinois code is right now slated to become available in spring of 2024. Enforcement may begin for jurisdictions who choose to adopt the stretch code beginning July 1st of 2024. So also want to recognize that the resolutions and jurisdictions may choose to split residential and commercial so that a jurisdiction may say we are going to adopt only the residential stretch code and commercial is going to remain on the base code, or vice versa. So you can either have all stretch code, all base code, or you can do residential one and the commercial the other for that. Additionally, the stretch code does have a couple of appendices as part of this. As part of passing a resolution, local permitting jurisdiction may elect to incorporate those appendices. The big one that we're going to talk about is the electric only appendix. And so you might have a jurisdiction that as part of their adoption says we are adopting the stretch code along with the electric only appendix. But again, that is up to each jurisdiction to choose if they decide to adopt the stretch code along with any other appendices that they may wish to adopt or not. So, this is an overall look at just a real brief snapshot of the stretch code. So providing this, again, the slides will be available on our website along with the recording of today's webinar for this. So with that, I want to start a poll. Questions being, once the stretch code becomes available, am I required to use it? Yes or no? And second question, can jurisdictions enforce a stretch code for commercial and base code for residential? Yes or no? Just a couple of more seconds to answer. All right. Most people did get these correct. So no jurisdictions are not required to use a stretch code, and they can split their enforcement between commercial and residential for that. So now, just to be clear, if your jurisdiction adopts the stretch code, then projects in that jurisdiction do need to follow that. So I just want to make sure I clarify that. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Robert, and he's going to begin with some compliance paths.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So, as Ryan said, we'll dive into the compliance paths available in the stretch code. And if you've kind of a frequent flyer with us, or if you're familiar with the IECC, these will be a little bit familiar as well. Starting off, we're going to talk about a couple above code programs that are available as compliance pathways within the Illinois Stretch Code. So first we have the Passive House Institute, PHI, or the Passive House Institute US, FIUS. Both of those building standard programs, if your project complies with those programs, the project then complies with the stretch code. Similarly, if your building complies with the IECC Appendix RC, the Zero Energy Appendix, that will also count as compliance with the Illinois Stretch Code. So what's the stretch code is recognizing here that the CEJA Act set certain performance standards, and in particular, the above code programs here are for the purposes of the Illinois Stretch Energy Code under Section 55. The board shall allow and encourage as an alternative compliance mechanism project certification by nationally recognized nonprofit certification organizations specializing in high performance passive buildings such as these on the screen, and offering climate specific building energy standards that require equal or better energy performance than the Illinois Stretch Energy Code. So this is recognizing that if you want to go beyond the energy code, that's fantastic. Go ahead and go beyond the Stretch Energy Code, and that will be in compliance with the Stretch Energy Code. Moving on to more of the standard non-above code. So these would be the compliance pathways for the Stretch Energy Code as it is without going above the code. Similarly to the base state energy code, the base IECC, we have a prescriptive compliance path, we have a performance compliance path, and we also have an ERI or energy rating index compliance path. All three of those are formulated very similarly to the IECC paths. So again, borrowing language, borrowing structure from the IECC. If you do choose to go through the prescriptive compliance option, that will require compliance with sections R401 through R404. So that would be most of, walking through the front sections of Chapter 4 there, as well as R408, which would be the additional efficiency requirements, which I will touch on next. So just remember, you have prescriptive, performance, and ERI pathways. If you go prescriptive, you're going to have to comply with R401 through R404, as well as the additional efficiency measures. Oops. Went a little bit too far there. All right, so continue on here. So the certificate, just to touch on this really quickly, if you're familiar with the updates to the 2021 IECC, an energy code certificate is required within that code to be posted somewhere in the building, and that certificate contains information such as wall insulation, window performance, heating and cooling system types and sizes and efficiencies, all that sort of information. The certificate is helpful in the event in the future that a project needs to be done at the building. We have a record of what was there before. The Illinois Stretch Code is adding on a little bit to that requirement, and is adding on that whatever choices or additional efficiency measures that your project selects within section R408, those selections also need to be indicated on the required energy code certificate. The energy code certificate you see on the screen is one that we have developed. I've not added portions in there for section R408 yet, but you could use this as a base and then add on your own selections for section R08. So moving a little bit forward, let's dive into some of those additional efficiency requirements in section R08, R408. So, oops. Buildings that are following the prescriptive path. So only the prescriptive path is what we're talking about here for stretch code compliance. Those buildings, as I said earlier, need to follow both the prescriptive requirements as well as section R408. When you get into R408, you have an option to either select a prescriptive package or you can choose to comply with section R408 by achieving a certain amount of points. So first I'll cover the prescriptive package, and then we will talk about the points. Oops, keep going a little bit too fast there. All right, so the prescriptive package for section R408 compliance is as follows. The building shall comply with all three of these items. Heating and cooling equipment shall be electric heat pump equipment. Water heating equipment shall be a heat pump water heater. And 3, the measured air leakage shall be less than or equal to 2 ACH 50 with either an energy recovery ventilator or an heat recovery ventilator installed. So if you are choosing the prescriptive compliance path for the Illinois stretch code, and then you choose the prescriptive path through section R408, these are the measures that you must comply with. These are the requirements that your project must meet. Adding on to that just a little bit, the Illinois stretch code has a definition for cold climate heat pumps. So if you are in climate zone 5A, and just a quick reminder that climate zones are found in chapter 3 of the IECC, that's where you'll find the climate zone map and climate zones listed by county, by state. So if we are in climate zone 5A, which would be Northern Illinois or Chicago, air source heat pumps shall meet the following requirements as cold climate heat pumps. So the unit must have a COP at 5 degrees. That 5 degrees is the exterior temperature. That the unit must have a COP of equal or greater than 1.75. So this essentially means that if the outdoor temperature is 5 degrees, the unit must be able to transfer at least 1.75 times the amount of energy they consume. Second point there is it must have greater than or equal to 70% of their heating capacity at an exterior temperature of 5 degrees. So the heating capacity and the way that that's worded there, so it's 70% of the heating capacity that's available at 47 degrees must be available at 5 degrees. So again, making sure that we have a usable amount of heat. And often, depending on the location and the condition of the existing building, 70% of the heating capacity might be enough to survive cold snaps without a significant effect on interior temperatures. If you need or want supplemental heating after that, you can carefully size supplemental heating to extend that range even further. So these definitions for cold climate heat pump performance are also included in the latest version of Energy Star's rating certification for products. So if you go to the Energy Star product finder database and search for cold climate heat pumps, all of those units will meet these requirements. So that's an easy way, one easy location where you might be able to find units that actually meet these requirements is by following Energy Star. All right, so additional credit requirement options. So what I just talked about was the prescriptive path through R408. Now we're looking at the points path through R408. So we have a prescriptive compliance project. We are complying with R408, and we've decided to comply with R408 by choosing or by achieving a certain amount of points. At the moment, that point amount for a typical average house is set at 24 or 29 points. Again, as Ryan mentions, a lot of this content is still in development and still not completely firm. So we're looking at 24 to 29 points for an average home. For dwelling units that are greater than 5,000 square feet, so bigger than average, you need to achieve an additional 5 credits. And then each measure selected shall meet the relevant subsections of R408 and receive credit as specified in the table for the specific climate zone in the project. So interpolation of credits between measures is not permitted, and there is no partial credit given for any measures. So you either achieve the points or you don't. Looking at that table of points here real quickly, and we'll go through this a little bit more on the next few slides, but this is the list of additional efficiency options as it stands at the moment. So you can see you have a column for climate zone 4 points and a column for climate zone 5 points. Remember, if you're confused about climate zones, go back to chapter 3 of the IECC. Let's walk through a few of these here real quickly. So if we look at the left side of the screen here, envelope performance, enhanced envelope performance, the stretch code is essentially giving you 3 different envelope targets for UA performance. So that's the U value area calculation that you might be familiar with through the IECC. So they're giving you 3 different targets for UA performance, and then 1 target for window U factor performance. Those are the options within the enhanced envelope portion there. Looking at more efficient HVAC equipment, that's going to set performance targets. So a target SEER value, a target COP, a target HSPF, depending on the unit type. So as you can see there, we've got cooling systems, so AC systems, gas furnaces, and heat pumps. So those all have different performance targets and different points values based on the climate zone and the system and efficiency that you're able to achieve. But the point of more efficient HVAC equipment there is it's going to give you some target performance values that you have to look for and meet within the units. Moving on a little bit further, so we also have reduced energy and service water heating. So somewhat similar to the HVAC equipment, this is going to give you required unit performance by unit type. So whether you have a fossil fuel water heater or a heat pump water heater, or there's just a high performance heater, it's going to break down those types of water heaters and then give you performance targets that the installed unit must meet. Additionally, under the reduced energy and service water heating, there's a potential credit there for compact water distribution systems. So if you can keep your entire water distribution system, if you can limit the size of that to a certain quantity that's stated within the code, then you will get additional points for designing and installing a compact water distribution system. Looking at more efficient duct thermal distribution systems. So we have a few options here for this, and a lot of the duct sizing here, it's ducted or ductless systems that are inside the envelope. So if you have your entire duct system within the envelope and you're a ducted or a ductless system, you're going to get points for that. And then the third issue there, the third number there, reduced total duct leakage. That is essentially going to give you points if you achieve a certain duct leakage rate. And there's a different value there for if it does or does not have the air handler installed, somewhat similarly to the way that the current code is handled. Moving on to the last few bits here. So improved air sealing and efficient ventilation. So that is giving you leakage targets with or without an ERV or an HRV installed. And then there are also potential credits for designing and installing a balanced ventilation system. So it's giving you some different linkage targets with caveats of, is there an HRV or an ERV installed, or have you installed a balanced ventilation system? There are points for those options there. And then the last one here at the bottom is energy efficient appliances. There will be a table in the stretch code that lists specific appliance performance metrics, and the appliances that we're aiming at there are clothes washers, refrigerators, dishwashers, and clothes dryers. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe you have to have at least 2 of those for those points to apply. And then I think just skipped over our poll question here. Go ahead and launch that. All right, so poll number 2, first question. How many extra efficiency credits does a new average size home require? 10, 24, 29, 29 or 34, or depends on the home? And second question, can requirements get partial credit? Yes or no?
I see that we've got a couple of questions that have come in. First question is, will optional appendices be listed as appendices, or will there be a single document called stretch code? These optional appendices are typically taken directly from the IECC, and so if it's already found in the 2021 IECC, they will not need to put that in the Illinois stretch code appendices document for that. It'll just be part of the adoption process. But the CDB will look to put out, so we'll have the 2021 base energy code amendment packet that many of you may have seen, and then there will be a separate one that will come out that will incorporate stretch energy code. So that would include things that are not found in the 2021 IECC.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. The first question, it looks like the vast majority of everybody got that one right. The answer there is 24 or 29 points for an average size home. Again, that number is still to be determined, but that is the correct range. And then question 2 here, looks like a little bit closer, about 50-50. The answer there is that you cannot get partial credit. You can add multiple options within one of those blocks. So within HVAC performance, you can add multiple of those together as long as they do not overlap, but there is no credit given, no partial credit given. You must achieve the full requirements and you get the full points. There is no partial credit given or interpolation allowed. Oops.
All right.
Share those real quick. And I will let Ryan talk a little bit more about electrification requirements.
All right. So this is not the all-electric appendix that we will talk about later. This is going to be in the base stretch code is electrification ready. Electrification readiness. So for 1 and 2 family dwellings, calling for the new parking spaces to be provided. Other new residential facilities that are not 1 and 2 family dwellings will go see there will be the reference over to the commercial provisions for that. So if you're in a multifamily, they just rather than reciting or trying to re-recite them in the residential provisions, those provisions will be found over in the commercial provisions for that. So in the residential section, this is calling for each dwelling unit with a attached or detached garage or other on-site private parking provided to be provided with 1 EV ready space. So for each dwelling unit, you need 1 space that's EV ready for that. As far as cooking, even if we have gas cooking, we do need to bring a minimum 40 amp single phase 208 or 240 branch circuit to within 3 foot of where the conventional cooking top or range would go. Again, that 3 foot, the whole concept is this gives people the option going forward. If there's a gas stove, they can go back with a gas stove or they can go back with an electric. It makes the choice much easier rather than saying if we have to, if we want to switch from gas to electric, oh, now we got to run a whole bunch of electrical. We have it there for either one. So obviously, if we do not have cooking products installed, then we do not need to deal with electric for those products. So similarly for clothes dryers, here it's a 30 amp circuit, 208 or 240, and terminating within 3 foot. Again, giving people the option going forward of which do you want. You can have gas, you can have electric, either one. Now the code here does not require this to be the other way around. So if you install gas appliances, you do have to have the electric branch circuits provided. If you put in electric equipment, you don't have to run the gas piping for that. So for clothes dryers, again, understanding in residential, you might be dealing in multifamily. So there is an exception for clothes dryers that serve more than 1 dwelling unit and that are located outside of the dwelling unit. Then you don't have to have the electric readiness installed for this. Then we get over to water heaters, again, a 30 amp 208 or 240 circuit. Again, you'll see these continue to pop up fairly similar. So we've got 40 for the stove, 30 for the dryer, and another 30 for water heater. Also noting here, again, anticipating these are going to move to heat pumps, making sure that we have a minimum space for these water heaters. So volume of 300 cubic feet, so that you don't want to cram it into a closet with no connecting jumper duct or anything else like that for future heat pump to be able to use. I do have a couple of exceptions here. So if you have R2 dwelling units, looking over at the commercial provisions, if you're in R2, and the minimum volume is not required if you do have sufficient air circulation. So You might have to bring ductwork. If you do want to put it in a little closet, that is allowed, but you do have to make provisions for that air circulation for the future heat pump. So, as far as the space heating, so here want to provide designated exterior space. Oftentimes, the designated exterior space for where your heat pump is going to go outside is where your air conditioner is. But recognizing, because we have to do condensate for cooling equipment or heat pumps, so making sure that we're able to drain that condensate away, along with a dedicated branch circuit for a future heat pump space heater. So here we have a reference over to the International Residential Code, and along with capacity for a heat pump sizing. This is where it gets very important to do your load sizing of equipment that is required by the code, but improperly sizing your equipment will oftentimes lead to much larger capacity requirements for electrical services. This is where we have encountered facilities where they start to look at this and say, oh, in order to make this transition, I'm going to have to move from a 100 amp service to an 800 amp service. Something tells us that the sizing was not done properly for that. Obviously, we're going to want to make sure that we label this. So these are going to be labeled at the panel, typically spare, and they also indicate where this is. So it may be spare dryer, spare electric heating, spare range, things like that. Just so that way people are understanding what things go to for that. So obviously we're going to make sure we leave room not only for the wires that we've ran to the space, but we need to make sure that we've left space in the panel to install the breaker if it's not installed at the time of installation. So also have solar ready, recognizing that solar continues to get cheaper and more attractive over time. And so the construction documents calling out where the dedicated solar ready roof area is, incorporating any structural design for future solar installations, and then the routing of conduit and any pre-wiring to the electrical service. Or if this is solar ready for, you're going to do solar ready for domestic water, that you have plumbing from that solar ready zone down to your service water heating system. So this solar ready could be for solar thermal or solar PV. I would imagine PV is probably going to be the preferred method, but the code is giving you an option for either one. So, as far as renewable energy infrastructure, the code kind of splits this out. One provision for 1 and 2 family dwellings, and then a separate section for all other Group R occupancies. So, and for the all other Group R occupancies, they're just going to point you over to the commercial section, or the commercial provisions for these. So for 1 and 2 family dwellings, the solar ready zone and townhouses, this is so single family, 2 family, and townhouses, solar ready zone, we're going to make sure that we have a space of at least 250 square feet for future solar panels. Obviously, if you're going to install them as part of the project, you don't have to have a solar ready zone, because by virtue of them being there, it's ready. So this isn't over and above a planned and installed solar project. So additionally, there is some exceptions here for dwelling units 3 stories and less. There is a slightly smaller permission of 150 square foot instead of 250 square feet. So, for solar ready, in order to take advantage of that, we need to be sure that they are not obstructed So vents, chimneys, roof-mounted equipment are some common things that we see as potential obstructions on the roof that may throw shade on those panels. So, along with this, we've got reserved electric space for future solar electric. So this, if you don't install any of the breakers, this will be a fair number of breaker spaces for your electrical panels. If you have 2 for your stove, 2 for your water heater, 2 for your dryer, and now 2 for your solar or other renewable energy system. So we're up to 8 breaker spaces if you don't go ahead and put in the breakers right off the bat. And here they're even calling out practice for this to put the reserve space at the opposite end from where the feeder is. Commonly we'll see panels where the utility feed is coming in from the top. If so, then the breaker space for the future renewable energy would be at the bottom of the panel, trying to minimize the potential for overloading the electrical service. With this, we have an interconnection box. So we need to have an interconnection within 24 inches of the main. And so this is where you've got a pipe or raceway that runs all the way from the electrical service up to the attic or a capped roof penetration. Here calling out at least 1 inch of metallic conduit or permanently installed wire. So recognizing some areas of the state, we cannot have flexible wire, and those typically install non-flexible metallic tubing, also or metallic conduit as common practice. So you can just go ahead and install the conduit. You don't have to install the wire at the time of installation at that time. And with this, again, we're wanting to make sure that people understand what this is for, so people don't run across an empty conduit and say, oh, wonder what this is for. Need to make sure that we have labeled both ends of this for future solar electric. So when someone comes across a wire or a conduit in the attic saying, okay, I wonder, is this live? Is this not? What's this for? That it's clearly been labeled for that. Also mentioned earlier, so if you're in group R2, 3, or 4, go see the commercial provisions for the Illinois stretch code for these electrification or electric ready requirements. Well, and with that, let me go ahead and launch another poll. First question, for electric ready, do I have to install the gas infrastructure if I install the necessary electrical infrastructure? Yes or no? And the second question, does the stretch code require participating? We haven't gotten to this one yet. We'll see how good people are. Does the stretch code require people to participate in any demand response program or not? We'll see how good people are at predicting that. Questions that came in, is the required EV space class 1 or class 2? The provisions for that, I believe it's a 40 amp 208 or 240 volt circuit. So that would be capacity for a level 2 charger for that. And for cooking, for all electric, again, the range, it calls for a 40 amp circuit. That does fit most electric ranges will work with 40 amp. There are some out there that do require a 50 or larger. Again, this is not going to provide infinite options for future provisions, but we're trying to make it so that people do have options in the future. Good question about if the future space can be in a sub-panel. I don't think that the code calls out that it has to be in, that it doesn't say if it
I don't remember seeing that either.
It does not, I don't see that it prohibits it, but that sub panel would have to be installed as part of the original building installation. So you can't just put a two pole breaker or 2-pole spot in your main electrical panel and say for future electric sub panel. You would have to install that sub panel at the time of construction. But good question on that. Experience on upsizing panels for the stretch code. Example of using older homes. Stretch code, for the most part, is going to apply to new construction only. Robert will touch a little bit later on as far as when it does apply to existing, but generally speaking, this is for new construction only. What we're seeing for most homes, 200 amp service is oftentimes feasible, even with the electric heat pumps, the supplemental heating, not the backup heating, but supplemental heating that they may require, all the heating appliances, understanding that there is a lot of diversity in all electric homes out there for that. So. All right, let me go ahead and end our poll. All right, for electric ready, do I have to install the gas infrastructure if I install the electrical infrastructure? No, there is no requirement for gas. Excellent, people picked up on that. And does the stretch code require participating in a demand response program? Yes or no? Good. 2/3 of people predicted the right answer here. The stretch code does not require participation in a demand response program. But with that, I'm going to turn over to Robert, and he's going to touch on demand response requirements.
Sure. All right, so what does the stretch code require? Well, the stretch code requires that not less than one thermostat shall be provided for each separate heating and cooling system, which is, we would expect there to be at least one thermostat. So primary heating and cooling systems serving the dwelling unit shall comply with sections R403.1.1 and R403.1.2. So that's going to be your mechanical systems section of the code there. So, but at least one thermostat per system. Those thermostats must be programmable thermostats. If it is a programmable thermostat, these are the requirements. Must be capable of controlling heating and cooling systems on a daily schedule, maintaining different temperatures at different times of the day. Must be capable of setbacks, no lower than 55 or greater than 85. Must have initial manufacturer programming with a heating set point of not greater than 70 and a cooling set point of not less than 78. So just talking about fairly standard programmable thermostats. Demand response thermostats. So this is getting a little bit towards the question that we had in our poll. Programmable thermostats shall include demand responsive controls capable of communicating with the virtual end node using wireless or wired or wireless connections. Thermostat must be capable of executing the following actions in response to a demand response signal, automatically increasing cooling by 1, 2, 3, or 4 degrees and decreasing heating by the same amount. Now, again, as Ryan said, and as our poll question stated, you are not required to take part in a demand response program, but the thermostat must be capable of these performance here, of these capabilities. Moving on to demand response water heating. So if you have an electric storage water heater from 40 to 120 gallons with an input rating of equal or less than 12 kilowatts, shall be provided with demand responsive controls in accordance with section R40355 there. There are some exceptions to this as well. Water heaters that can deliver water at a temperature of 180 or greater, water heaters that comply with section 4 or section X of the ASME boiler and pressure vessel code, water heaters that use 3-phase electric power. So those are all exemptions. Otherwise, if you have an electric storage water heater within the ranges and input ratings there, it does need to have demand response controls within it, whether or not those controls are being used or you're taking part in a demand response program, they need to have the controls there. All right, moving on a little bit to performance-based compliance. So as I said in the beginning, just with the IECC, you do have a performance compliance pathway here. The performance compliance pathway is based on total building performance and requires that the design meets the following. The requirements of the sections indicated within table R405.2. And then also the proposed total building UA shall be less than or equal to the building UA using the prescriptive U factors from the U factor table multiplied by 1.10 in accordance with equation 4.1. So this should be somewhat familiar to those who are familiar with the IECC before. This is giving a little bit of a 10% buffer there between the performance, the stated performance in the U value table and the proposed total building UA performance of your design. So a little bit of a buffer there. Moving on to the ERI compliance pathway. So as I said, there's the prescriptive compliance pathway, the performance compliance pathway, and then the ERI compliance pathway. So the ERI compliance pathway, what we know at the moment about the stretch code is what is on the screen here. You may note, if you're familiar with the current ICC, that these two ERI values without combustion equipment are actually the same as the current code. That is likely to change as the code continues to develop, as well as the ERI ratings for with combustion equipment. Those are also likely to change as they are highlighted. So we'll keep an eye on this as the code continues to develop, but there will be ERI targets. Moving on, let's kind of quickly go through some existing building requirements here. So existing building requirements within the stretch code. So the first key thing to understand within the stretch code is when are existing building requirements triggered? Well, the stretch code now the stretch code is including a new definition of substantial energy alteration. So what a substantial energy alteration is an alteration that includes work or two of the following. So 50% or more of the area of the interior wall covering of the building thermal envelope or fenestration, that's being changed within the project. 50% or more of the area of the exterior wall covering is being changed. So either 50% or more of the interior or exterior of the wall. Space conditioning equipment that constitutes 50% or more of the total input capacity. So if you're switching out more than half of the HVAC system, that applies. Water heating equipment constituting 50% or more of the total input capacity, or 50% or more of the luminaries in the building. So you can kind of see all of these are 50% or more, but if you hit 50% or more in two of these categories, that project is now considered a substantial energy alteration, and stretch code requirements for existing buildings would be triggered. So let's talk a little bit about what additional efficiency requirements that would trigger. So you would go back to the same table. The table number listed there is not exactly the same as the one before. If I remember right, there's a little bit of a typo within the table number code there, but it will point you back to the table in R408 to achieve not less than 10 credits. So if you're an existing building project that gets triggered by the substantial energy alteration, you'll need to achieve not less than 10 credits. Alterations to the existing building that are not part of the addition but are permitted with the addition shall be permitted to be used to achieve this requirement. There are some exceptions there. Additions that increase the building total conditioned floor area by less than 25%, additions that do not include the addition or replacement of equipment covered, and a couple of the system sections there. Additions that do not contain conditioned space, and where the addition alone or the existing building and addition together comply with section R405 or R406. So if you're following the performance pathway or the ERI pathway, then you also do not need to achieve these additional efficiency credits. So kind of moving quickly here, heating and cooling systems, duct systems that are part of the alteration shall comply with section R403 and this section. The duct systems are going to have to meet requirements of section R403. Additions to heating, cooling, and duct systems shall comply with this section. As it states, those changes need to comply with 503.1.2. Ducts, as we just said, ducts newly installed as part of an alteration shall comply with section R403. So again, it's pointing you back to R403. For the requirements that are involved in a new construction. There is an exception here where ducts from an existing heating or cooling system are extended to an addition. That exception is also currently in the existing code. So that should be somewhat familiar. And just remember the pictures here. We want ductwork that looks on the right side, not the left side. System sizing. So are you required to size systems for an existing building project? Well, stretch code states new heating and cooling equipment that is part of an alteration shall be sized in accordance with R4037 based on the existing building features as modified by the alteration. So yes, you do need to perform system sizing. As Ryan said earlier, system sizing is pretty important in terms of controlling the overall electric load and electric capacity of the building, and that also has an impact on costs for the project. So system sizing is really important. It also has a lot to do with the interior comfort of the building if the system is really sized correctly and continues in steady operation and can keep the building comfortable as we want it to be. There is an exception here. If you can demonstrate to the code official that compliance with this section would result in heating equipment, cooling equipment that's incompatible with the rest of the building, then we won't follow this section. We don't want to cause any further problems to the existing building than there already are, obviously. Duct leakage. So when an alteration includes any of the following, ducts shall be tested, and they shall have a total leakage less than or equal to 12 CFM per 100 square feet of conditioned floor area. So if any of the following apply, you need to meet that requirement, where 25% or more of the registers in the system are relocated, or 25% or more of the total length of all ducts in the system are relocated, or where total length of all ducts in the system is increased by 25% or more. So if you meet one of those targets, then you will have to do duct leakage testing and meet the requirement 12 CFM per 100 square foot of conditioned floor area. There is also an exception to this requirement. Duct systems that are located entirely inside conditioned space in accordance with R40332. So another point from the code there is that bring those duct systems inside conditioned space, and we'll give you a little bit of credit there. You don't have to meet some of these more stringent requirements. Additional efficiency requirements. So again, we're talking about existing buildings here. So additional efficiency requirements package, substantial energy alterations shall comply with the table of additional efficiency options that we went through earlier, and achieve not less than 2 credits. 1 credit may be obtained by complying with 503-151, which is, sorry, trying to read my notes here. Yes, the proposed additions of section 502.25 and 503.15 create a framework to apply R408 to large additions and substantial additions. So that's what we're looking for there. And there are some exceptions, alterations that are permitted with an addition complying with R402.35, and then alterations that comply with either the performance or ERI pathway. And then talking about R503.151, R503.151 is high efficacy lighting. So all spaces shall be provided with high efficacy lighting, meeting the definition stated there, 90 lumens per watt, or luminary efficiency of 55 lumens per watt. Okay, we've got a couple minutes here. I'm going to try to go through this really quickly just to get each of these slides onto the recording. This is the optional all-electric appendix that Ryan mentioned at the beginning. The idea behind this appendix is to push for electrification of buildings and to electrification and decarbonization of buildings. So the goal is to go all electric and get rid of our combustion. All electric buildings will have to comply with these stated sections. So you're going to have to pick a compliance path and then also have additional efficiency requirements, just as you would with any other compliance path. And then cooling equipment, there are going to be some requirements for cooling equipment. New replacement ACs shall be heat pumps, sized to provide both heating and cooling. Any other heating systems can be configured as supplementary heating. There's an exception there that when a space heating system serves multiple dwelling units, the system is not required to be configured to supplementary heating. And then we have one last slide here that covers a little bit more about supplementary heating. And so the stretch code contains some requirements to control that supplementary heating and to try to make sure that it doesn't run away from us, basically, or make sure that that supplementary heating is only on when it absolutely needs to be on, because supplementary heating is oftentimes electric resistance heating, and that can add up a little bit if that's running for a consistent amount of time. So the stretch code does have specific requirements in there about heat pump supplementary heating. Since we're right on time here, I think I'm going to leave it there and we can see if we can answer some of these last questions.
And a couple of more questions that have come in. Question regarding ground source heat pumps versus cold climate air source heat pumps. trying to understand why the difference is so small. Those points are based on energy modeling that is performed by the Department of Energy, and they have determined that even though the efficiency might be substantially or could be notably different, the overall energy impact of that difference ends up being fairly small. So that may go back into some of the modeling for that. Question regarding the National Electric Code. The National Electric Code does not have requirements for leaving spare breaker spaces in the electrical panels. That there is some Canadian regulations as far as you do have to leave at least 2 spare breaker spaces in a new electrical panel, but the National Electrical Code here in the US does not have such a requirement for those. And then another question about is there a single document or this draft that we have been using for today's presentation? Is that available at this point in time? Unfortunately, it is not available at the moment. That is actually right now in development. There is a meeting later this week on this. That may change or substantially change the draft that is the present version in use by the committee. So we are hoping to make a draft available as soon as we can, even recognizing that it may still continue to change, but we are in discussions with CDB as far as trying to make a draft available so that people can begin their preparation for potential stretch code and even just talking with future building owners as far as, you know, how might we build better buildings for that. So I think we have answered all the questions that have come in. I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you do have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us at energycode@illinois.edu. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.